When you think of depression, what comes to mind? More specifically, who? Perhaps you think of someone who's closed off and isolated, someone who wears dark clothes and doesn't really have any friends. I personally have never thought of someone who's bubbly, personable, outgoing, and involved in a lot of things. At least when I thought of depression. But what if I told you I had depression? What if I told you I'm thankful for the diagnosis? Would you believe me? Most people don't. I'll admit that it does sound a bit far-fetched, but my depression diagnosis has changed my life for the better, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. In this speech, I'm going to talk about how it felt to be diagnosed with depression, how I felt during the darkest years of my life, and how I feel about it today. After I turned 17 in September of 2016, something felt off inside me. I couldn't pinpoint what it was, but I knew it wasn't me. I was closing myself off to friends. I was constantly tired, both physically and mentally. I was also lashing out at and losing friends who once meant the world to me. I was also once a girl who was involved in every extracurricular activity she could be in. But in the blink of an eye, I had turned into a lonely girl who shut herself in her room whenever she could, just to avoid someone possibly seeing that something was wrong. After a few months of feeling this way, I confided in my stepmom about how I was feeling. She recommended that I go to the doctor to try and get some sort of help. I took her advice and was diagnosed with depression in December of 2016. The doctor started me off on Prozac, which is basically a gateway antidepressant. I did it as I was told. I took my pills and attended therapy, but nothing was working. Instead of getting better, I was feeling worse and worse every day. I started to contemplate suicide, which is a fact I'm not proud of now, but it happened nonetheless. Months went by before I finally told my therapist how I was feeling, and what happened next is a blur. All I can distinctly remember is being whisked away and placed in a hospital room under constant supervision. A few hours passed before I was strapped in on a gurney and taken away to the Hutchinson Mental Health Facility. I spent a total of 3 days there, where I was kept constantly busy. If I wasn't attending a group therapy session, I was in a one-on-one meeting with a psychiatrist. Every morning started with positive affirmations, and every night ended with a phone call home. I was released on April 7th, 2017, and have continued to work on bettering my coping skills and mental health overall. Life after Hutchinson wasn't easy. There were prescription changes, pitiful looks from strangers, and countless therapy sessions. Even though it was difficult to adjust, I was able to persevere, and now I'm stronger as a result of everything that occurred. I've also gotten to the point now where I feel comfortable enough to not take any pills, and instead I'm using the coping skills I learned there to get through a difficult day. The coping skills I learned have got me through tough times, and I'm so thankful to have learned them. Now that you know my story, or at least a shortened version of it, I want you to think back to the question I posed earlier. What does someone with depression look like? Do they have any certain characteristics that scream depression? Chances are they don't. And chances also are they look just like me. Or maybe they even look like you. But having depression doesn't make one any less of a human. It took me years to finally be comfortable in that fact. Now that I look back on it though, I'm grateful for the experience I went through. I learned so many valuable lessons during the darkest years of my life. For example, I learned that actually talking about how I'm feeling can help alleviate the negative emotions I'm experiencing. I also learned that when I surround myself with truly positive and supportive people, they help eliminate any doubt I'm casting about myself. But the most important thing I learned is that life is truly beautiful and should never be taken for granted. Yes, I do still have bad days, but at the end of the day, I'm so grateful that I am alive and loving every second of it. If it wasn't for my depression diagnosis, I don't think I would ever truly be able to appreciate the beauty of being alive. And that sole realization is how my depression shaped my identity.